Agrumémonos todos en la lucha final. El género humano es la internacional. ¡Viva la revolución! ¡Viva!
Vamos a empezar la reunión. Los que quieran tomar la palabra, adelante.
Initially there was a reluctance to talk because people say, well, that's in the past and it's too painful and we don't want to go into that. And then once they started to talk, they wouldn't stop. And being able to tap those memories, to use those memories, in a way made it easy to make the film. And we also found that once, particularly with the young people who are in the film, once they'd started to research the story or to think about the story, they became very passionate, you know, as passionate perhaps as the people who actually fought in the war. And so that made it easy to make the film. Well, one of the joys of doing the film was working with this group of militia men and women that we created. And they say the important thing was their commitment, but it was important that they became a group, a real group with relationships between themselves. And so the rehearsal period was about turning them into a militia. And that meant some military training, and it meant talking to some people who had actually experienced the war, and just living together like a group of militia people for a period. And that was quite lively, that was quite fun. And then once that had been established, making the film was easy. We had to find actors from several different countries. There's the Englishman, who's Ian Hart from Liverpool, who in the film is a working class lad who's out of work. And then we had to find an American, we had to find 2 Frenchmen, and then obviously a lot of Spanish men and women. And I suppose it was important to find people who had a sense of politics and who had a sense of commitment, and who in other circumstances might have gone to fight the war. I mean, for example, one of the French actors, Pascal Desmoulins, had been to Sarajevo during the Bosnian fighting. So we first of all, obviously we looked at where the war had actually been fought, and then we tried to find somewhere that hadn't been touched by too many telephone lines and too many changes since. And we ended up in near Morea, in the countryside near Morea, and a very attractive town called Mirambel, which was where the main battle took place. But the landscape is spectacular. I mean, the landscape is just for the people who came from England, and I think for Tom as well from America. I mean, we found the landscape very, very impressive, nearly as impressive as the people. Well, there are 2 in a way. There's 2 final battles. There's a battle which was modelled on the final battle that the Poom took part in. Which happened over a period of a day and a half, and so that was we had to shoot that in a very fragmented way, but then that was followed by when they are disarmed. We're giving the end of the film away here, of course, but when some of the militia are disarmed because they are members of the Poom, which was declared an illegal organisation, so their arms were taken away. And for the cast, for the actors, this was a deeply shocking thing, because they knew that in the film they put their lives at risk. They knew some of them had been killed in the struggle against the fascists. So to be faced with having their guns taken away, or their rifles taken away at gunpoint by other people in the Republican Army, was a deeply shocking thing. And of course in the film they didn't know this was going to happen. And the first time we shot it, they all fled. They all went into the next field, and we had no scene. So we had to organise it a bit more than that. But they were very upset by that. I mean, I guess an important thing for a director is to try to understand the strengths of the actors he's working with, the things they're good at, and then put them in a situation where they will be able to reveal their strengths. And the things that Rosanna and Ithea and Mark and Geordie Dowdare and all the others had was a real belief in what they were doing. Once we'd started to work on it, they developed a great belief in what they were doing. And that was their great strength, really. And so, obviously they knew roughly the course of the war, you know, because it's a matter of history, but they didn't know what was going to happen to that group of their section of the militia. That unfolded as we were shooting, and they had the sense that somebody was going to be killed because one of them had a shorter contract than everybody else. But apart from that, they didn't know exactly what was going to happen, which meant that you have that uncertainty that I guess you have in war, that you don't know, you know, the wrong bullet may just be coming your way, and they responded very well to that. They really gave a lot of commitment, and provided there's that commitment there, then the director can do anything, I think.
Únete a la batalla en la que ningún hombre fracasa, porque aunque desaparezca o muera, sus actos siempre prevalecerán.
It's a question of finding a story that was through English eyes, because obviously we're English, and so we had to tell the story through the eyes of an English person who's an unemployed English lad, and then it was a question of finding a story that revealed the important things that happened, but which wasn't like an obvious history lesson. So the story has to be a story about people and their adventure, but equally the adventure is significant, you know, beyond itself. It's an important adventure. I guess the story is important because it brings together all the important things that have happened in the 20th century. The possibility of people taking charge of their own lives, really for the first time in history. And there was that possibility in Spain, just as there was that possibility in Russia in 1917 and in other countries since. There was the possibility that people could really take control of their own destiny. And that didn't happen. And so the reason it didn't happen is important. The possibility is important, and then the reason it was frustrated is important. And so to try and, on the one hand, give people confidence that that these things are possible, that life can be very rich and good, and yet to try and explain why it went wrong, so that we can learn from it. We have to accept the desolation of our cities. We have to accept alienation amongst young people. We have to accept this kind of level of despair, because this is the only way we can organise society. And the importance of what happened in Spain in '36 is it shows that's not true, that there is a better way to organise society, that people can control their own future. So I think because the way the world has gone, we live with that despair now. It's really important that we have films, or we have books or articles, or we put hope back on the agenda, really, and the Spanish Revolution puts hope back on the agenda.